These are Shadow Daggers. They are some of the cheaper knives available in CSGO and typically play second or third fiddle to butterfly knives and karambits. They aren't as prestigious as other cosmetics in Counter-Strike, but I've always liked them. Despite what you've been told, they aren't actually butt plugs. In CSGO, they're known as Shadow Daggers, but they're more commonly known in real life as Push Daggers. A handheld knife shaped like the letter T, designed to be held between the index and middle finger and pushed into the enemy. The Push Dagger, or Push Dirk, has a long history that dates back to 14th century India when a similar push knife was invented, although it looks less like the letter T in its shape. It's called the Katar. The handle is made up of two parallel bars connected by two or more cross pieces that are then connected to a blade. The blades are always double-edged and are generally straight and with lengths from a few inches all the way to 3 feet. This isn't the push dagger that we see in CSGO, but you can easily tell that it's a predecessor. The T-shaped push dagger first appeared a few centuries later in 1800s America. The American frontier was rife with gamblers and criminals of all walks of life, and the push dagger became a necessity for any man looking to conceal a blade. In New Orleans and areas along the Mississippi, it was referred to as a gimlet knife and was popular for personal protection. The push dagger was also carried by certain politicians, businessmen, travelers, nearly anyone who needed a discreet weapon that they could carry without drawing attention. Throughout American history, these daggers have been called by different names, but they all share the same T-shaped design, which makes them all part of the same push dagger family. They were also introduced to Europe during the 19th century by travelers from the Americas and the Far East, which increased their popularity in countries like Great Britain, France, and Germany. Push dagger popularity continued to grow during the 20th century, largely thanks to trench warfare during World War I. Soldiers needed a way to defend themselves in close-quarter situations, and pistols weren't always readily available. In response, weapons manufacturers decided to produce a dagger that could be easily carried and effective in a fistfight. Perhaps the most famous example is the Dudley Punch knife, which looks a bit different than the T-shaped design, with one side of the handle noticeably longer than the other. The idea is the same though, a handheld weapon with a blade in between the index and middle finger. Push daggers are still manufactured today, and they continue to be a prime choice for self-defense for a few reasons. First, they're easy to use. If you can throw a punch, you can use a push dagger. This is reflected in CSGO's in-game description. Designed for efficient brutality, using a push dagger is as simple as throwing a punch or two. It's also easy to conceal because of its small size and unique shape that allows it to fit easily into sleeves, pockets, waistbands, boots, or whatever else, and then quickly be drawn out without trouble. Pushing also has its own advantages over stabbing, especially when it's used with a clenched fist. These weapons are still found today, but they aren't as readily available as they once were, as legal restrictions have crunched down on them more and more over the years. The push dagger is illegal in many jurisdictions. Several US states have statutes either specifically disallowing push daggers or banning daggers of any kind. In many places you can obtain a license for a handgun, but carrying a push dagger would be a crime. In the UK, it's now illegal to import or trade push daggers, so the weapon suffers from its association with gamblers and similar shady characters in the past. This means that the public perception of the push dagger is generally negative. That shady reputation is what makes me like it so much though. That's why I like that Valve called them Shadow Daggers, because it implies they're used in the dark. More like an assassin than a warrior. That appeals to me. Knives in CSGO are all the same, so Shadow Daggers aren't any better than any other knife in the game. Their unique animation is pretty cool though. I flip these guys around constantly when I'm playing and the feeling never gets old. There have been quite a few complaints about the crosshair shaking when you use them, but I haven't noticed that in a really long time, so maybe they fixed it. The stab animations are decent too. You can push with one blade at a time with left mouse, or use right mouse for some double stabby action. I like them, and that's why I made this video. Most CSGO players don't like the butt plugs, and they think they're not a real knife. but that's okay. We certain proud few will uphold the integrity of butt plugs and laugh heartily when we stab you from behind. Some of the coolest ones I've seen are the marble fades, Dopplers, ultraviolets, crimson webs, and of course, the fades. They're some of the most unique weapons I've ever seen in a game, even though they don't appear very often. I'm stretching it a bit here, but I've always thought the daggers in Assassin's Creed were push daggers, at least in the way they're used. While they don't have the traditional T shape, Ezio does push them into his enemies. They're also focused on concealment and serve the same general purpose as the Indian Katar, so it likely deserves a place in this video. This also means that the history of the push dagger would date back to the Italian Renaissance, which means that different forms of the dagger were being used during the 15th century in completely different places, which actually wouldn't surprise me at all. However, we also have to consider that Altair was using them during the Crusades, meaning that they were around 300 years before they became popular in India. Instead of chasing this idea any further, I'll just say that the daggers in Assassin's Creed look and work a lot like a push dagger, in my opinion. I don't remember many other games that feature push daggers, but I did some digging, and they're also in Call of Duty Ghost during one mission, and they're featured briefly in Mortal Kombat. There isn't a lot more to say about push daggers in games, but I wanted to cover the history of them because they just don't look like the type of thing that would actually exist. Or maybe they do. Maybe next time you see someone carrying them around in CSGO, you can think back to their origins in India, their use in the American West, and their service in the Great War. I hope you enjoyed this video on the push dagger. If you did, be sure to share it with everyone you know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.